it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
1, 2, 3, move it.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I hope Christian does know by now how sarcastic I am, because do you ever think, like, when you say something sarcastic, if I ever went to court and Christian was like, well, he said this to me, like, I'd be in real trouble.
I worry about everything
what
Christian has heard us say if he wanted to take us to court.
I mean, just dry reading a sarcastic comment that wasn't meant that way, but just, like, taking it out of context, it'd be like, oh, right. Man, I'd be in real trouble.
Provocation.
I want to remind you to join Hans and Scotty coming up next Tuesday at RGS Exteriors from noon to 3, 4235 Farm Road in West Jordan. It's time to talk some Utes and get to Bartle. Hit it, Christian.
Covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hey, Steve, happy Friday.
Happy Friday, fellas. How we doing?
We're doing terrific. Hey, I can't remember the last time Utah won important back-to-back basketball games. And, you know, I get that they were actually pretty competitive to start the year last year and faded down the stretch. But to that point, it's honestly probably been close to a year since Utah basketball was winning back-to-back good games. And I guess you can say you've done that, or they've done that, against Oklahoma State and TCU. So do you sense real momentum heading into this BYU game tomorrow?
Yeah, it has been a minute since Utah's won some really valuable games, and the non-conference slate. They had those opportunities, but weren't able to get it done against three quality opponents. So to get this done now in back-to-back games, I think is really good for the program, and I do think they've found some momentum. They've found something that they can hold firm to and build upon. And this is their new standard of play. Craig has talked about this over the last 10 days or so, that, they had to learn what Big 12 play was actually about, right? You can watch it on film, you can talk about it, you can break it down on the whiteboard, you can talk about how physical it's going to be and all of this and all of that. But until you actually get on the court, you don't actually know what it's like. And so I think that's been something that Craig has harped on, that they had to actually experience it. And, they got a full welcome in that regard with Baylor, Texas Tech, and Iowa State, three of the top contenders, in the Big 12. They got a pretty strong introduction to Big 12 play. And I do think they learned from those three outings. And they played better against Iowa State. The result doesn't say that, right? The margin of victory for Iowa State doesn't suggest that. But I do think that's where it started to turn for Utah, was in that game. And they parlayed that into, a good production, good showing against Oklahoma State, where they, played with that physical, tough defensive mindset. But they also played a disciplined brand of offense, which I think, took advantage of Oklahoma State's defensive mentality, where they want to be super aggressive, get into passing lanes, take away shooters. And so, they're learning, they're growing, and they're showing progress over the last two games. To go on the road to Dallas-Fort Worth and get a win over the TCU Horned Frogs, who, coming into that game had won 9 straight at home. They were undefeated on the season. To get that win, to go wire to wire with the lead, with, standing a couple of TCU runs, especially late, where they kind of grabbed the momentum with about 5 minutes left. Utah responded time and time again, and I think that speaks to the mental side of things and the mental progress in terms of, the discipline, the mental toughness you need to have in this league. Because in those first 3 games, man, it was an absolute grind. I think it was Bill Riley that said they're like a boa constrictor, where they just get a hold of you and just suffocate you because they force you to play so good on every single play. And that demands a lot of guys mentally. And I think they really showcased good progress in that regard against TCU. now returning home with an opportunity tomorrow against BYU. We know what that game is. We know what that atmosphere is like. We know, what sort of mental toughness you need to win that game. And I think Utah, they do have momentum, but you can't rely on momentum itself. You got to continue to do the things that you've been doing over the last week or so and up it even further against BYU tomorrow.
What kind of game does it have to be for Utah to have its best chance against BYU?
Yeah, I think Utah, they've shown that they can win. They can in a couple different ways, right? They can score, they can get hot, they can shoot. They haven't been able to shoot. They haven't shot it well over the last couple of weeks, and that's been the big issue. They've really come along on the defense side of the ball, and I think as long as they, play good, sound defense, they can get enough offense. They've really found more balance offensively. Against TCU, they had 4 in double figures and then 2 others with 8 points apiece. And then I think another was 6. So they're getting good scoring balance where they can, get it inside. They can shoot from outside. But I think in every Big 12 game, it's just going to be a grind. Each and every Big 12 game is going to be a grind where you have to play hard on each end of the floor. You have to play disciplined. And I think, if you look at both of these teams, they find success in similar ways. You look at their shot distribution. They love the corner three. They love the three from the top, and they love getting in the paint. They're not teams that like to get into the mid-range a lot. And I think that's going to be really unique in essentially you're defending yourself in a lot of ways in terms of the offensive attack that each program likes to have. Obviously, BYU, they've got talent on that team with Denham and all of that. But Utah's got a good core, a good, they're finding a good 7, 8, 9-man rotation that they feel really good about and can match up with Utah or with BYU tomorrow. I'm fascinated with, a potential matchup of Igor Denham and against Keanu Dawes, just given the size and the way that both players are playing right now. I think that could be a really intriguing matchup. But I think, it's going to be a grind. You're going to have to play strong defense, and you're going to have to grind it out on the offensive end to get some points.
Steve, pretty wide-ranging conversation with Witt and the new coordinator earlier this week, Jason Beck. What did you learn from that? Maybe what stood out to you?
Yeah, I thought that was really good to hear from the coaches. We didn't get an opportunity to talk to Coach Whittingham, during the early signing period, which we typically do, but just given kind of everything that was going on with the program, that month with how busy they were recruiting in the transfer portal and finishing up signing day, all of that, we didn't get to hear from Witt until now. And Utah also provided, Jason Beck, obviously the introductory presser and Morgan Scally as well. And I thought it was fascinating. There's certainly a few things that we took away from that. Obviously Cam Rising, we'll start there. Whittingham let it be known that, he's no longer on the roster, but he's going to allow Cam Rising to announce on his own time what his plans are. And, we talked about it last week, Ben, and I did not expect Cam to be a part of the roster next year. So we'll see what Cam elects to do. Like I mentioned last week, he may elect to go through the draft process. To take on that next phase of his football career. He may elect to enter the transfer portal, which had been previously reported that he intended to do. That's certainly an option. Then he may also elect to move on to the next phase of his life, which could involve him getting into coaching and taking an opportunity to start coaching football. And I think all three of those options are certainly viable for him. And the next couple biggest things, I think, he touched on Dorian Singer. There's an opportunity for him to return in 2025. It's something that Dorian absolutely wants because it's an opportunity to play with Devin Dampier, who those two are brothers and have grown up playing football together. And so there's a unique opportunity for Dorian to potentially play with Dampier in that relationship. He's got a waiver submitted to the NCAA to potentially get a season of eligibility back from his freshman year at Arizona. There's also the NCAA, which we've talked about, previously. They're considering, moving to 5 seasons of eligibility instead of 4 seasons with the redshirt year. That would also impact Dorian. And then beyond that, Coach Whittingham talked about the loss of 2 defensive starters to the transfer portal, in Cameron Calhoun and Keanu Tanavasa. We've talked about both, but I thought it was really interesting that he let it. He said it as plainly as he could. That NIL was a significant factor for both Calhoun and Tanavasa, which I think we all kind of knew and understood. Keanu has shared his personal reasons as to why he elected to go to BYU, but I think we've learned, this past month that, the defensive line market in the transfer portal is a premium, and I think there was probably a nice chunk of change for Keanu going to BYU that he was certainly praying about. So there's that, and then just the first opportunity to interact with Jason Beck. It was interesting. I thought that he was much more open and willing to have conversations and willing to go in depth on some of his thoughts and feelings and just his beliefs more so than Andy Ludwig. Andy Ludwig was pretty cut and dry with his commentary. He's been in the game for so long. He didn't say much. And I thought it was really refreshing just to hear from Jason Beck, kind of elaborate on some things and to explain, his offense, the process in terms of, him coming into the program and having to hit the ground running in the transfer portal, right? Like he had his hands, in their transfer portal recruiting, kind of remaking this offense and bringing in who they brought in. And so, there's a lot still, we've touched on a number of those topics at KSL Sports. I've written about a number of those topics and still have plenty more to dive into from that press conference on Tuesday.
Why do you think Coach Witt, going back to his comments about NIL and saying that was the major factor in those 2 players transferring, what purpose did that serve for him to be so forthcoming about that? I was surprised he made it a priority to get that message out there.
Well, it's just a matter of fact, right? Getting the truth out there that it was a significant factor in both of them, in both of their recruitments, that was the issue. And I think there's always a reason for it. And I think for Utah specifically, you want that out there, but also it can serve as sort of a motivating factor to generate, potentially more funds in terms of NIL. When you have a guy like Tanavasa and Calhoun to potentially motivate boosters to provide more resources, right? I think he talked about it even earlier in that press conference that, you're always wanting for more in terms of NIL resources. He did something similar, a couple years ago. I think it was the 2022 season. USC was coming to Salt Lake City with Caleb Williams. Utah had just lost a commitment. I think he flipped to TCU. And Witt, during that week, a lot of the talk was about NIL around USC's program and what they were getting and with Caleb Williams and all that. And Witt took the opportunity to kind of talk about where Utah was at with their NIL resources. And lo and behold, about a month later, they finished that recruiting cycle, with Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, Smith Snowden, Hunter Clegg committed at that time. And to land those guys, you got to have resources. You got to be able to provide NIL and all that to those types of prospects. And I think, that moment in and of itself kind of helped Utah close on the recruiting trail. So, I don't think it was necessarily shot. I don't at either of those 2 players. I've heard numbers in terms of what they've gotten. I can't report it, but I've heard numbers, and these guys certainly are making, not just those 2 individually, but players across the board now are making pretty significant amounts of money now.
Steve, thank you for your fine work. As always, we look forward to our conversations with you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, fellas. Have a good one.
You too, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Steve Bartle covers the Utes for KSLSports.com. I think Witt's a smart guy, and I think there's kind of I don't give a what factor to him now, which I actually appreciate. But what purpose does that serve? To say we lost these guys because of NIL. Who's that for? What's the point of that?
I think he's right. It lights a fire under the
it's a fundraiser.
the donors.
Okay.
Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses, saying, "Hey guys, I'm doing my part."
See, the excuse thing and sour grapes. If those are the motivating factors, then just don't say anything at all. Because in today's day and age in college sports, aren't you better off, one, sending out into the recruitosphere that you're flush, and two, not crapping on your players that leave because you never know what's going to happen. And so he went against those two things, and I just wondered, like, what's the purpose?
Yeah,
like when Mark Harlan kicks in the door to hijack a press conference, what's the point? What's the purpose? What are you trying to get out there? I didn't understand that. If it's fundraising and you're shaming your fans into giving you more money, then I guess so. But if it's just sour grapes and complaining, I don't see the point.
Like Bartle said, they had positive results last time. Whit talked about this compared to TCU having more money to spend than Utah and yielded positive results. So we'll see if they can do something similar. But yeah, I'm sure there is some frustration there with it. But also to cut through some of the idea that, like, BYU has overtaken Utah as far as developing defensive linemen. I'm sure that's a real sensitive spot for Whit.
Yeah, who cares about that if BYU can just buy the already developed
so
defensive
throw that out.
linemen?
Exactly right. So throw that out, though. So throw that out. That, hey, this is not about someone choosing BYU because, as the Tanuvasa said, it felt more like home, or it felt more familiar, or I felt more wanted, or whatever the answers have been. Whit says, no, it's money. It's not family. It's not culture. It's nothing like that. It's that someone paid him. And it does, for whatever weird reason, you can see how that might cheapen the decision to move.
Cheapen?
Yeah.
How so? Like it's not virtuous?
Yes.
I don't care.
I don't care either.
None of this is virtuous. I don't.
But you're signaling something to your fans. I mean, we're saying this whole thing's a message to either donors or fans. And people read into messages of why would a guy leave from one rival to another, especially when Utah's strength historically has been putting D tackles in the NFL, and Tanuvasa was going to get there, and he was. And if you're to say, well, he's doing it because BYU does something better culturally or whatever, fans want to lord that over and hold that.
But even if that's true, who cares? Like, so he's
every coach,
devoutly religious person who's going to a religious institution.
And Whit is saying that's not the case.
But there's nothing wrong with that or right with that. Either way, I was sold for years that these are young people making up their mind what's best for them in their life. I don't care why. And the truth is, and here's what Whit won't tell you, is they could have absolutely ponied up the dough to keep Tanuvasa. They've ponied up more dough than that to keep other players. They made a budgetary decision.
I think that's accurate.
Not to do it.
At two positions where they are traditionally flush with depth.
So there's another reason that comes in that's we're not going to spend that kind of dough on that position because we got to have another guy just as good. Well, then what are you complaining about?
And I don't honestly know, was he asked about it or did he bring it up independently?
It was PK. PK asked him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then yeah. Shout out to PK. Doing the hard work.
And he absolutely...
So if he's asked about it, answer it. Yeah. I don't have any problem with that.
No, I don't have a problem with any of it. No, I don't give a what Whit who's willing to come out and say it. I'm certainly not critical of him saying that. I'm more curious as to the motivation behind that. I mean, you can answer in a variety of different ways. We wanted to keep the guy, and for, some reasons that were personal to him, whatever those may be, he elected to go a different way. Like, whatever. Just because you're right doesn't mean you have to say it. Or just because it's matter of fact doesn't mean you have to say it or say it the way that you do. So if you're telling me it's a beg for money thing, I could probably buy into that.
I think there's more than that. I think there's some sour grapes there. It's not afraid of sour grapes.
And I just don't think that, I don't know. I don't know why send that message out there. Is that productive?
I don't know if it hurts him that much at this point.
Well,
where Whit is, how much longer he's going to coach, and what he's already developed. I don't know. Maybe a younger coach, I'd be worried about it.
I hear that, and I think, man, this dude's going to chisel me on the dough.
It's not what I've read from it.
Why not? That's what he's putting out there. We don't have the dough. We made a decision not to pay this guy. Somebody else was going to pay him more. We didn't have it, weren't going to spend it, whatever. That's different than...
weren't going to spend it, didn't have it is two different things.
Either way, it's a negative message. It's not a message that... A recruit wants to hear you rolling up to his front door in a Lambo. And you say, hey, son, this is yours, whether that's real or not. And I guess in Utah's case, it would be a Ken Garff truck.
Sure.
But you get my point.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear, they don't want to see, that's bad press, if anything, they just lost their best player to their rival because they don't have enough dough?
I wonder if that actually is true, or if Witt says, you know what? Because as we've heard, Utah was willing to pony up for Tanuvasa, and the rumors have been that they were paying a very competitive rate for him to get him to stay. So whatever reason he
That's
chose
not what
BYU.
Kyle said, though.
No, you're right. That is not what he said. So why did he say it?
Yes.
Right.
That's all I'm asking.
And that's what I'm saying, because he understands that this has turned into a cultural conversation, and he's trying to bury that conversation and change it back to has nothing to do with someone wanting to play at BYU over wanting to play at Utah and what the schools offer on the field. It has everything to do with what they offer off the field. And that's what Witt is trying to quash.
But even the religious thing is a convenient duck, which is why Tanuvasa threw it out there in the first place, I'm guessing, because it's an easy duck. We're not owned by the church and can't provide exactly that same experience, even though we think we've got a good LDS experience here too. Some things you just that are just going to be different naturally. We wish him the best spiritually and physically. On to the next.
I don't think Witt wants to lose those relationships either.
Which ones?
Relationships with LDS athletes?
No, that's what I'm saying. But he can't. The BYU experience and the Utah experience are never going to be the same thing, and they literally can't be the same.
No, but I think Witt has made a real argument in his lifetime that, hey, you can be a productive member of the church and come play at Utah and still get that experience that you may think you can only get at BYU, but that's not true. I think that's been something Witt has argued and built for a long time.
Oh, sure, because it's not untrue. But, I mean, there are some people in this world, I knew some of them, that want to live under the honor code.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So Utah's never going to have something like that.
No, but Witt is trying to say you can live an honor code style lifestyle at Utah.
I know, but some people want the accountability. I don't get it either, but the people want that experience. That's a unique thing you can never get at Utah, and the honor code is just one of those. But anyway, Cole Bagley is going to join us next, covering the Utah Hockey Club for KSLSports.com. Stay tuned, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hey, bro. You hear us every day with our crazy opinions.
Hey, what you doing?
Well, now it's time to hear from you.
Hey, great show.
Download the KSL Sports app and fire off your thoughts with the call-in tab on the bottom of your screen.
Your show is fantastic. It's the one that captivates me the most.
You can tell PK to stop singing.
Cheap bangs.
Let Jake and Ben know what you really think of the Jazz. Tell Hans and Scotty about your favorite barbecue spot or what color of tie JJ should be wearing on TV. The best entries will be played on the air. Download the KSL Sports app now and hit the call-in button to let your voice be heard.
I think you guys do an incredible job.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us?
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben want to remind you to nominate the youth sports volunteer you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and listen every Thursday to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. All right, joining us now, he covers Utah Hockey Club. Let's hit the open for Cole.
With complete coverage of the Utah Hockey Club, this is Cole Bagley of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
What's going on, Cole? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, gentlemen. How we doing?
Unfortunately, not that happy for the Utah Hockey Club, who is only 2-11 in their last 13. I know they've had some overtime games. They haven't gotten some points regardless, but it seems like the same storyline over and over. A lot of close games that they just cannot find a way to play a full 60 minutes and eke out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of hitting copy and paste on a lot of my content these days because, like you said, it's the same story. And that is the fact that they just cannot seem to play a complete hockey game. for 40 minutes of 60, they compete. They they score goals. And they've been able to go toe to toe with a lot of really good teams. But then for about a 20-minute period, whether that's it's generally been the second, but last night it was the third. Their energy slips. Their competitiveness seems to kind of go out the door, and teams take over and dominate, and they're losing a lot of hockey games right now. Like you said, not a lot of wins over the last month, really. Since they had a hot streak for a bit, and since then it's been the polar opposite. So, this team unfortunately just is not playing complete hockey. It's not that they're playing bad hockey. It's just they're not able to put a complete performance out on the ice, and it's resulting in a lot of losses.
What kind of coach is the Bear when it comes to facing adversity? Is he consistency of message guy? Is he fiery? Does he get after his team? Does he let them off the hook? What's kind of his messaging like?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's trying to stay positive. I think he's, it's kind of the same message, every game of, well, I think we did this well, but, I'm proud of our fight, but at the end of the day, a couple things didn't go our way and we ended up losing. I think it's all a perspective of how young this team is, and the season is going the way that a lot of people anticipated that it would in terms of an overall record, especially in the front office. I mean, Bill Armstrong, constantly preached, hey, we're a 500 team. There's going to be nights where we look like the best team in the National Hockey League, and there's going to be other nights where we look like we can't win a game. And so, it just kind of feels like, hey, this is what we expected, and not necessarily the nature of it. I think it's tough that it's been a pendulum. It's been, hey, for a week or two, this team looks unbeatable, and then for, a week or two or three at this point, they look like they're never going to win another hockey game. And so I think in certain moments when his team plays very poorly, yeah, there's a bit of fire to him. But, kind of his outlook and assessment lately is, kind of what I was talking about earlier of they're not playing bad hockey as a whole. It's just key moments where, things kind of go awry and get out of control for a minute. And overall, they're playing good hockey, but you got to play a full 60, and that's just not what they're getting right now.
I think one of the myths that we don't focus enough in sports is we always either want to fix something or pretend that it's broken. And the truth is, Utah Hockey Club might not be either. Like, they may not need to fix this before the end of the season. And it may also not be broken. This may just be a part of the process of developing a young team into learning how to play. So how do you think they view it? Do you think they feel like, hey, this needs to be fixed, there needs to be a change made, whether that's a trade or whatever? Or do you think, as you just mentioned, Bill Armstrong says, hey, this is what we signed up for, we're going to go through it, and we're going to benefit from it in the long term?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what you're saying, Ben. I think the front office understands the process. I think they're looking at this season and, time is kind of the greatest asset of the Utah Hockey Club right now. And there is a lot of potential for this team. So there's not a ton of pressure, I think, to really fix anything per se. This team is not pushing for a Stanley Cup. This isn't a Vancouver Canucks situation. What's going on right now up there of, that's a team that was very close to making a conference final and hoping that they were going to continue to grow. And now it's a disaster, and they're kind of looking at making some trades and having a yard sale, and their coach is calling people out in press conferences. That's not the situation for the Utah Hockey Club. There's no pressure on this team. They know who they are. They know where they're at, and they're trusting the process. Now, in terms of the players, there's obvious frustrations. It's even if you understand that you're not going to compete for a Stanley Cup and that you're not necessarily going to be one of the best teams in the league. These are still professional athletes who have incredible competitive drives, and they want to win hockey games. And it's tough because, I think a lot of the fans are going, how do we fix this? What's wrong with these guys? To be honest, I don't think they really have any clear-cut answers in terms of what needs to be fixed. It's tough when the issue is the fact that you're just not getting a full effort for 60 minutes. It's not necessarily a talent disparity. It's not, that they're being, absolutely, decimated night to night. Like these guys are playing competitive hockey. It's just they can't put it together for an entire game, and that's kind of what the conversations I've had with a lot of the guys are. Look, we know that we have it. We know that we're good enough, but for whatever reason, we just can't seem to put it all together. Ole Mata talked to me about consistency. Ian Cole talked to me about maturity. And I think right there is two things that are harder to control. It's not, hey, we just need this, or we need this type of player, or we need this type of goaltending. Look, these are problems that we got to dig deep to figure out, and some of them are just going to have to come with more time.
Cole, thank you as always. We appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Hey, appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Cole.
It's our buddy Cole Bagley, covers Utah Hockey Club for KSLSports.com.
There's just, and like last night, there were some very clear issues. And I mentioned they looked very tired in the third period, but like even Mikhail Sergachev, who's been so good this year, just made some really bad, uncharacteristic mistakes, a stupid penalty, a bad turnover that you just can't do that led to goals. So it just feels like there's some wear and tear on the season. And I think losing catches up to you, and it probably has with this club a little bit. And they'll snap out of it. They'll win some more games. Again, I'm getting to the point where I'm really thinking the playoffs is an unrealistic goal this year.
And, of course, Cole's appearance on the show is brought to you by Hercules First Federal Credit Union. Growing stronger together. Jake and Ben wrapping up the show next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Accessing.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
The general manager for the Utah Hockey Club, Bill Armstrong.
Every game, we're living and dying in the fact that we want to stay in the race, so every game is life or death. So the boys are dialed in and ready to go out there and fight. So it's been pretty exciting. And let's be honest, we got great fans. Anytime we can play at home, it's sold out. It's a great environment. People are going crazy. Like, how could you not want to play hockey in the middle of January in Utah?
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The sports you love, the teams you can't live without.
Get a sense of urgency!
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two niggas on the airways, talking sports. They got him Matrix and also loves his tie-dye. Ben's got style with his scarf. Oh my.
Jacob Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This segment is brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255, Peach Doors and Windows. Ben, in our last segment on a Friday, I want to delve into a really controversial topic.
Good idea. Really good idea.
It is. Trust me.
Okay.
The TikTok's got to go.
You're on the side of the Supreme Court. You're out on TikTok.
Well, I guess it would be on the side of U.S. Congress, not necessarily the Supreme Court, but yeah.
But they sided with the Congress, yeah.
They said Congress has the ability to do that.
Sure.
And by the way, it's not a ban technically, right? Because they're just going to make it so you can't download a new version or it can't update or whatever. So you're not going to get arrested for having TikTok on your phone. You just can't.
The user can't do it. The user's not in any trouble. But if you host it and you provide it, they can get fined $5,000 per user who is still actively using it. So there's a real chance, as of Sunday, it's gone.
Great. I'm so excited.
Okay.
And this has actually nothing to do with whether or not I think Congress can do it, should do it, or honestly, the technology behind it, I have no idea. I happen to believe we're being spied on by just about everybody all of the time. So,
I agree.
But I think it's got to go. You ready for my reasoning?
Let's hear it.
Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes' brother Jackson has posted a goodbye video to all his followers on TikTok. Quote, since the app is getting banned, I thought y'all would miss your favorite created on the platform. I mean, that
really,
doesn't even...
supposed to say creator, but yeah, he spelled it wrong.
So saying since TikTok is leaving, that he is leaving the whatever.
atmosphere as a content creator.
Yeah, he's leaving the public conversation. I don't care what the other reasoning is.
That's good enough.
This is good enough. That this bozo...
The ends justify the means.
This bozo disappears from public consciousness?
He is the worst.
Do you remember his stupid dances on the sideline? Like during the game?
I do. Yeah, he's awful.
Simply latching on to the attention that his brother generates? I mean, yeah. Yes, ban this app. Yes.
I have some friends that are... who I would say a significant amount of their money is earned through TikTok views. So I have a lot of sympathy for people who are about to take
collateral damage. Collateral damage, bro.
Some people
I don't
are
know
about
what
to
to tell
take
you.
a big step back, and I do.
You know who's also losing money?
Have concern
this
for them.
bozo.
Unfortunately, he's not, right? Like, he's the reason he has the access he has is because he's rich, because his brother can give him whatever money he wants, and I'm sure has. And
I don't
he
know
feels
that's
very protected.
Their relationship.
Maybe not.
This might be the only way he makes money. I hope it is.
Yeah, if that's what you're hoping for, I understand it. I suspect he's got other means of income, however he wants to, and his brother will take care of him.
So I'm sorry your friends are going to have to move over to the Instatalk or whatever it is, but I don't feel bad. This guy's going away. And I'm talking about going away to jail. This isn't speaking of China.
No, and
I'm
you're right.
just
He can go to
about
Instagram. He can go to Red Note. He can go to...
Red Note. Stop it.
It's where people are going. People are moving over to Red Note. They are. Everyone's moving to Red Note.
You were the one promoting Blue Sky, too, over there, which...
Yeah, I still use Blue Sky every day.
Lasted about 10 minutes.
No, I still use it. You can find me there at Ben's Hoops. I still get interaction every day with it.
Are you going Red Note, too? Already have, haven't you?
Is that the one that was? It's like the Chinese.
The
TikTok?
actual Chinese app.
Chinese, yeah.
I've seen a lot of posts about like Chinese people complaining that their app is now filled with Americans.
Yeah,
bringing
absolutely.
American culture into it, and they're like, "Oh, this sucks."
Yeah,
Ben's already deep into it.
I don't have a Red Note, but no, that's where people are going to go. Yeah, people will find a new spot to exist. People always will.
Is that I read a story that the Chinese people are making Americans show their cats in order to stay on Red Note. Did you read that?
No, I
it's
didn't.
like a trending thing. It's like if you want to interact with us, you got to show us a picture of your cat.
Okay, being bullied, cat bullied.
I don't know why. I don't know why they'd want to see. Do all Red Note users in America have cats? That's the other thing I wanted to know. Is there a specific thing to?
It's kind of like the Android users at the hockey game.
Yeah, right.
right.
Is that? Yeah,
It's a
that's what I'm talking
cultural
about.
thing.
Where Ben judges everybody that isn't good enough to have an iPhone. Is it if you are on Red Note, you have to have a cat? Is your cat still with us, Ben?
I've never had a cat.
No.
He had the cat
No.
that snuck into his house.
Yeah, I did have a cat.
Oh,
that,
yeah, that's right.
that jumped into my house, that invaded my home.
That cat. You'd have to go find your neighbor's cat to get on what is it called?
Red Note.
Red Note?
Yeah.
I don't have a cat, so I'm not eligible.
It's the hard part. You're just gonna constantly be trying to. What's the game? Whack-a-mole. That's what the next TikTok is gonna be. You know what I mean? There's always gonna be some video host jumping up, which is funny. We used to have TikTok. It was called Vine. It's exactly the same thing. Facebook bought it and killed it, right? Which is insane because now
Twitter shut it down.
Twitter
bought
bought
it and shut it down.
Moronic. Because look, I mean, TikTok is worth.
It's not the nuts and bolts, though. It's the algorithm, right? And by the way, I don't know anything about this stuff.
Sure.
But isn't it the way that they filter content and the way that they do it is basically why it's so effective?
Yes.
And maybe Twitter didn't do any of that.
But that was when did Vine shut down? 10 years ago? You know what I mean? I imagine they would have improved their algorithm to compete, and they just lost the infrastructure.
I can't believe I'm even talking about this. I honestly don't care. But I am glad that
Progress.
I am glad that Jackson Mahomes is going away. I'm embarrassed that I even know his name.
We'll hear about him some other way.
So now if he's dancing on the sideline during a game, you just know he's a moron and not.
Well, you always knew he was a moron.
And
yeah.
not doing it for the TikTok.
You know who I'm going to feel bad for? The jazz dancers. You don't see it because they do it before the game while you're upstairs doing radio. But the jazz dancers, their little office is right outside the writer's room downstairs in the tunnel. And these two girls on the dance team film a TikTok before every game. And so they're not going to have anywhere to go.
Can I tell you, I ask an honest question? Whenever I see influencers in the wild, I think, God, these people are morons. How do you get over the self-moron reflection to
I mean,
put
we're
out
sports
this,
radio hosts.
to put
Come
out
on,
this stuff.
come on. We put the day we turned on the microphone, we got over this.
There's not people like in the room watching me make a moron out of myself. Like I'm not standing in the middle of public, like clearing people out and saying, "Hold on a minute,
my time.
I have to do a stupid dance." That's way different.
Okay, you are right that there is a weird thing, and I run across it not just with the jazz dancers who are all
hiking in the Cottonwood
extraordinarily
Canyons.
nice, but it's like, okay, I'm not gonna. And look, as a kid, you saw somebody taking a photo at whatever, and you didn't walk in the front of their picture. But now it is like way more.
Were they
common.
doing the sprinkler?
Yeah,
No.
right. Now there's like all these dances where I find myself regularly like, I will wait for you to finish your dance before I cross the road or whatever, cross in front of you in the tunnel, so I don't ruin your TikTok that you were putting together. It is a phenomenon that probably has to be ingrained when you're like 15.
What I noticed when I went to Toronto, this was what stood out to me. It was really weird. You know, you're at the plaza outside of the stadium, and there are people going up and doing like the interviews that you'll see on TikTok. And some of these people probably don't have a ton of followers, but they're just hoping that they'll get like a viral moment of just asking these stupid questions and setting up these dumb interviews. I thought it was really weird. Like there were a lot.
You were at the Taylor Swift Eras Tour.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Get a draw. The
Lot of
algorithm
TikTokers
will
there, yeah.
feed Taylor Swift stuff, and then they were hoping to go viral.
I even go back to the selfie stick thing. Like those people look like morons. Why? Like, how do you get over that?
Yeah, you got to have no shame.
Am I just too
Well, actually, the
self-conscious?
easiest way to do it is you make a little bit of money, right? Your TikTok starts paying you. You get enough interactions on a video or
Like,
views on a video, and you get some cash, and you say, man, that was the easiest $40 I've ever made.
Like those gals in Draper who are on the streaming show now.
How do I chase the money? Yeah, it's easy money if you can do it.
Is that still a thing? Is that show coming back?
I would imagine. It was the biggest show on Hulu for a month.
It was not good. I like Salacious Television, and it wasn't. I didn't think it was good Salacious Television. I like the Housewives of Salt Lake way more.
But you watched it, and I watched it. And Christian, did you watch it?
Passively.
So we all watched it.
But
That's
we watched,
why. So yes, it will be back.
But we watched it for different reasons.
Doesn't matter.
All Hulu cares about is that they
right.
got the
Did you
views.
do it?
Right.
We told our advertisers you watched it.
No, I got it. And we watched it because it's Utah and it's Salt Lake and it's a look on our culture. I watch all those shows. Like some of those polygamy shows lost me. But I watched Big Love,
Sure.
to see the take on.
You're going to watch Primeval. What's the one right now on Netflix?
I think so. I'll probably get there. But that's why I watched it. No, as far as like, listen, if I'm a critique of Salacious Television, it's not even that good. You know what I mean?
Sure. Oh, I didn't realize Betty Gilpin was in there. Okay. All right. American Primeval. The new one.
Have you watched that?
I haven't. No, I didn't know.
That?
This lady was in it.
Stay tuned. Hans and Scotty G are coming up next. We'll
Thanks,
talk to you on
Christian.
Monday, everyone. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.